to another episode of Monwara, Ali, and Lorlett Hudson Leadership Conversations. And what we're doing, we see as trailblazing leadership. And we come here on Saturday. So thank you for joining us. If you've joined us or if you're watching replay afterwards, you can also catch these conversations on my YouTube channel. Let the message spread, I say. So, a little bit about me. For those who don't know me, I'm Monwara Ali, and I'm a leadership coach and consultant. I'm also a CEO of a charity and a director of a CIC. And I am passionate about leadership. So, we have these conversations every Saturday because we're passionate about leadership. And today is going to be all about Jamaica. Over to you, Lorlett.
Thank you, Monwara. Over to Jamaica. Oh, great. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lorlett Hudson. I have been champion leadership development for the last 24 years. Passionate about leadership. So, when Monwara reached out to me and we're having this conversation about leadership, because leadership is something that not many of us been brought up to even hear the word leadership, much more to actually see ourselves as leadership. And I think, if you don't see yourself as a leader, then you won't really participate in thinking that you can make a difference. You're making a difference, but you're not taking ownership of what you're actually doing in terms of the impact. Sometimes just be in a meeting, just your presence being there make a difference. Just you being there change the conversation. And we really need to understand that whole thing around inclusion and diversity. If you don't show up, if you're not in spaces where people can actually see you, then sometimes that making that difference, you're present. So to me, leadership is everything. It's influence, everything. And we need to have more conversation about leadership. And so Manwara and I, this is why we're doing these sessions, to really enable, people to start thinking about, oh yeah, I'm a leader. Leadership is not about authority. Leadership is about, making a difference, making a change, and taking ownership of that. So for anyone who's listening, what we're doing is really putting the message out there, champion leadership, that everyone see themselves as leaders. Over back to you, Madwara.
Hey, hey, so Lorlett, thank you. And that wonderful summary of why we do what we do. It's not, this is live, but we, both Lorlett and myself, are always in spaces where we are comfortable being uncomfortable, talking about our cultural identity, what makes us different, because I think that's really key. Sometimes people are not comfortable to ask those questions, like, because, somebody might not feel confident enough just in case they're judged for asking a particular question. And, I get this all the time, even from the family. When I ask questions, I was labeled when I was younger the troublemaker. What do you ask so many questions for? Is it because you don't trust us, or is it because you don't believe us? It's not that. I genuinely ask questions because I want to know. And asking questions is very much something advocated in the coaching world because we don't know what we don't know. So I want to know about Jamaica because I only know what I see on the TV or I've heard from friends. But I must say, I don't actually know enough. And aren't we lucky today that Lola is in Jamaica? And I could tell from the background as well, like sunshine.
Bright colors. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was brought up in Jamaica. I left Jamaica when I was 13, and I always appreciate the sheer fact of that experience. Being an immigrant, coming from Jamaica, arriving in the UK, you have something to compare it to. The comparison, and if you're thinking about inclusion and diversity, it's always great to have something to compare it to. So for me, Jamaica, it's really everything to me, and having that level of culture and exposure. I'm still discovering, I don't know as much. And that's why I run my annual retreat, which is really giving people an insider experience of Jamaica. Because, some things that we learn on the media is not necessarily true. And it's about really discovering what makes the people great. What is it about them that cause them to be so competitive in that sense? Competitive mean that they push themselves 100%. When you look at the likes of all the great leaders that came out of Jamaica and continue to be there, there's something about wanting to be excellent, and
Mm.
that is what I want people to discover when they come to my retreat. What is it that causes the Jamaican people to aspire so much for excellence all the time? They push themselves 100%. And, I don't think that is portrayed enough. But, there's always a negative and there's always a positive. As a leader, I think it's our job to go and explore and find out and innovate and create what is there. And that applies also to people around us as well. It's really, looking at what is it that makes them great. Caught them doing everything great and, acknowledging them for that. But sometimes we tend to really look at what's not working, the negativity of life. Negativity sells, positivity doesn't. So
Mm.
what we're doing is actually saying, let's look at the positive side of the what so, you know. And so, yeah, I've been in Jamaica now since after COVID, backwards and forwards, really developing my work there. And so Monwara and I are talking about cultural differences and yeah, being an ambassador and a champion for leadership. We thought today's session we really look at food and what makes it different. And I think food is one of the greatest vehicle for cultural diversity, because I said to Madwara, we all eat with our eyes, and she laughed when I said that. The first thing you look at food and you think, oh no, I don't like that. Or you look at it and you think, oh yeah, that's exciting. And then we make informed choices without even tasting it because it doesn't look how we thought it should look in that sense. And then we discriminate without tasting. Over back to you, Manwara.
Do you know why I laugh, Lorlett, when you said we eat with our eyes? Because that's so true. It reminded me of my dad. Because my dad was most of his life, he passed away when he was 72. Most of his life, he was always a very fit man. But if growing up in my household, you would see like my dad wanted food to look really nice, presentation had to be nice. We had to have lots of dishes on the table. And we always laughed about him. And we said things like, me and my siblings would say things like, Dad's eyes are bigger than his belly. You see, that's why I laughed because it was like my father never had an ounce of fat that was visible on him, and I have to say I wish I could be anything like him, but I'm not. Unfortunately, my eyes and my belly are both big, but but that's the point, you see. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about like the food, the famous food in Jamaica.
Yeah, well, our famous national dish is ackee.
Hmm.
Ackee, and it's a fruit, and it's just got such a nice taste. And it's our national dishes, and you have it with green bananas, you have it with yam, and you have it with all sorts. You can eat, you can have it in so many different ways. You can have it in pastry, you can have it in so many different aspects of it, in that sense. So you can't go to Jamaica and not have ackee and saltfish. I mean, that is it. Or ackee by itself, if you're a vegetarian, you don't necessarily have saltfish in it. So yeah, it's one of my favorite dish. And so I thought I'll send you a picture of it. And then you say to me, oh, I think we've got that in Pakistan, and I said to myself, well, I can't wait to go because I might be the first one to eat it.
I'm gonna share Aki, a picture of Aki on the screen for those who are new to this wonderful fruit.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Oh my gosh, it looks beautiful. Well, you know what? There isn't an equivalent like that in the UK, is there?
I don't know. I've never seen it unless you're gonna get it in a tin.
Yeah, that's true. But we've got an equivalent, well, similar-ish in Bangladesh, and it's a very refreshing, watery fruit. It's one of my favorites. What does aki taste like? It looks
Scrambled
beautiful.
eggs. Scrambled
Scrambled
eggs.
eggs,
Yes.
really?
Yeah, scrambled eggs.
Wow.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, that's the first thing. When you first look at it, it does look like scrambled eggs. Yeah, that's it.
It looks like scrambled eggs and it tastes like scrambled eggs. Oh my gosh, imagine a fruit that tastes like scrambled eggs. I'll be eating it every morning. No more eggs for me. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Mm. Yeah, and for me, it's the vibrance of it. It's the just the idea that in Jamaica, of course, there are so many different nationalities. That's why the motto is out of many, one people. So from a child growing up, you really understand diversity and inclusion because, you got all different people around you. Chinese, it's really interesting to see a Chinese person really speaking Jamaican. That was a shock to my system. I went in the shop and I saw this Chinese man and he was just in the deep patois. I mean, I was like, what? That was really interesting to see. So it just goes to show, isn't it? You don't know until you know, and then you make assumptions as well. That okay, only one way of actually operating, but everyone, we are similar, but we also different as well. And that's it. Like I was saying to Monwara earlier on, we spend so much time thinking about the differences. But if we really look at the similarities, you imagine what really connects us. So if you think of my proverbs, the things Mama used to say, for example, that's one of the reasons why I created them, because it's around the community language, it's the survival language, it's the leadership language, it's our resilience language. There's so many different things you can use this language for, and it's enabling people to understand their power. Because it's where our power lies is in our communication and how we listen to ourselves and how we listen to other people. So when I use a proverb, it takes me 2 minutes to connect with someone, and that's where I'm able to create the relationship, the connectedness, the humor, the smile, the community, the connection, the remembrance, the reminder, of so many different things when I use the proverbs, because it's what makes us great. And there's some things you just can't say, you know, in standard English. You have to say in a proverb to really get the message across. What about you, Manwara, in terms of your community language? Was it like that there's some things that you can't say in standard English? It just doesn't work, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there are lots of Bengali proverbs as well. And, can't say that I haven't been thinking about since I discovered you and your proverb ideas. But yeah, it's, how many do you have in your pack? Is it 52 or
52. So on one
52?
side you've got a proverb, and every proverb tell a story.
Mm,
And whenever you think of a proverb, that's the other thing I said about people around social and mental health, right? With a
mm,
proverb, you have to laugh. There's
mm,
no way before you say a proverb, there is something there that generate humor in
mm,
that sense. So if you're feeling sad and you think of a proverb, it cheer you up. So there's so many different aspects of why
mm.
you should use a proverb.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah. So are you thinking of a proverb today that's befitting to culture, or what's coming to your mind?
Everyone, every day, one hand can't clap. One hand can't clap. It's yeah. When I decided to start the business 24 years ago, it was really about leadership and still is. And a name that keeps me inspired, keep me motivated, and keep the people around me remembering their culture and their heritage and preserving that. So one hand can't clap, really. I mean, there's so much in there. It's collaboration, it's partnership, it's village, it's community. It's recognizing that you're not on your own, and it's about belonging. So that proverb for me strike a chord all the time.
Yeah, and you that proverb, is there any on food?
I have to think about that one.
You
I'm
gotta
sure,
figure.
I'm sure there is. As you said, your eye is bigger than your belly. We actually use that one as well. In terms of don't eat too much.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Don't eat
yeah,
too much. Because sometimes you see the food and it just looks so exciting, and you put it on your plate, then you realize that you can't eat all of it. So yeah, that whole
yeah,
thing, yeah.
yeah,
Even though your culture is different to mine, we still use the same around being don't eat too much in that sense. Put enough
yeah.
on your plate.
Yeah, we say that, but then we're emotional creatures. My son will say, like during Ramadan, he used to when he was younger. Now he's more self-conscious around his health. He would look at the table. How many items have you got today, Mum? During the breaking of fast. And that is something I've been thinking about as well. Like, the woman, the mother, or whoever is the head of the household is always in control of what she does. But if she's a nurturer and more like a caregiver, that that personality trait of hers might inform how she leads. So often that means at our own expense, not prioritizing your health or own health and well-being. Like if you are fasting, just imagine you have a 16 to 18-hour day of fasting, and during those fasting, the last 3 hours you're in the kitchen cooking, you know and you're spending 2 3 hours because you want to please the family so that you can put 12, 14 dishes on the table. I know there are some Muslim sisters here who will hear this afterwards, and this will resonate with them too. Like, for years I was doing it because what happens is when you do one thing and you keep doing it consistently, it becomes a habit, right? And then it's very, very hard to unlearn what has become a habit that you don't even think about. And it's only in the last couple of years I've started to think, like, okay, they didn't make me do this. I did this because I wanted to. And I wanted to because I wanted to please them. And I wanted to fulfill my obligation. Why is that? Because I've been conditioned to believe that this is my priority and this is my responsibility. So, like coming home from work at 5:30, going straight into the kitchen and like almost killing myself while I'm fasting, right? Thirsty and hungry. I will spend an hour and a half, 2 hours trying to put like three, four hobs on at the same time to make all those dishes so that we have enough food so that it's eye pleasing. Isn't that like really interesting? Like I'm a big believer of reflection, and I think that has helped my growth and it continues to help me to grow as a human being. So yeah, there is a huge Mirjana. Hi, I just want to acknowledge Lorlett. We've got a listener with us, Mirjana, who is saying, "I'm Orthodox. The same situation between many Serbian women." You see, there's so much that us women struggle with because of our conditioned, and it's, I don't know whether, you talk about blaming, you can blame people, but until you reflect and you realize and you become a bit more self-aware, you can't make those changes. And making those changes is leadership. No one can make you do anything except yourself. But then for that, you need that self-awareness and that realization. So if I've digressed from Jamaica, Lolette, please bring me back.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's all part of the conversation. What you're talking about is how you see yourself, is how you view yourself as a leader. And sometimes we ourselves put ourselves in roles which no one gave to us. We
Mm,
automatically put ourselves in those roles because that's where we feel we can contribute. And even when you've been asked to push yourself out of those roles that you put yourself in, you hold on to it for dear life because that's where you feel that you're comfortable. Like with yourself, automatically, you see yourself as the person who provides the dinner, and so you decided to yourself as soon as I finished work. I mean, can you imagine preparing food and you're still fasting in that sense, just to make sure that all the food is on the table on time. But you've taken on that role. No one gave it to you. you
Mm,
know, you could have said, well, we could have had a takeaway, or somebody else to cook for a change or something. And it's that same thing we apply it to a leadership role where we see ourselves, this is my this is my responsibility, this is what I'm accountable for. And then we don't delegate to other people, and then we don't ask for help, and then we
mm,
don't share because we feel that we are the only one that can do it. I am the only one can actually do that. And that's why sometimes we, what's the word, automatically hold on to things and not
mm.
share, because we believe that I am the only one that can do this and no one else can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sometimes I think yes, but sometimes I think also if there is no one else that is willing to put their hand up and take the responsibility, you have to and I can't talk for anybody else. I can only talk for myself. As a young carer who grew up without a mother, I I had to take on that maternal role, and there was nobody else. I might have been maybe 8 years old, 9 years old, but I had to become my mother's mother, if you like. The roles reversed. So that's just me, but I know many women who have reached out to me via LinkedIn where their story has been similar. Um, One where maybe they're the eldest of all the siblings, and in some ways they became a carer because they became their mother's right hand. So bringing the sibling, it's a very, very cultural thing, and it's very hard to be different or to change that, because then you don't fit in with the rest of your community. And the reason why I like to highlight this is because you would have had no idea about women having to go, Bengali Muslim women going into the kitchen and preparing while they're fasting, not just Bengali, like every Muslim woman. You would have no idea that they're doing it while they're fasting as well. So, when my work colleagues at work say things like, around me, they will make comments like, oh my gosh, oh, so sorry, Manwara asked you for a cup of coffee when you're fasting, or so sorry, I'm having my lunch. You don't need to be sorry. We're accustomed to it. This is the norm. It was the norm for my previous generation, my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation. It continues to be the norm for my generation, and will definitely be the norm for the next generation, because our roles are different. It's society, community, culture dictates the role of a woman, and in our culture it is very much that the woman does not lead from the front. If she leads from the front, she is in trouble.
Yeah, but Manuara, you're actually doing that.
I know
So
I'm doing it. I've only been doing it for the last 3 years. I wasn't leading from the front as much before. But you've got to, like, the thing is, I am only doing it because I've been encouraged and empowered to do it. But my point is, how many women out there are like that actually have been, could be, like, I could tell you the top of the top of my head, like women I know that if I had to find people to lead an army, I would know exactly who to enlist, because I have seen the energy they've put, their past, their background, their impact in the community, their impact in the world that nobody talks about. But then we want the next generation of young women and to feel inspired, don't we? So if I don't lead from the front, who's going to see? How many women like me do what I do?
that's why it's important to have these conversations and to
Mm,
really, highlight it. Things are changing, and this is how it used to be. So it's about understanding the future. And my mantra is, be the leader who innovates,
mm,
because you have to innovate, because without innovation, as you rightly said, there is no change. And so we have to develop leaders to understand what it takes in order to access support. Whether you're a man or a woman, what does it take to ask for support? Because no one individual can create anything of significance. You will kill yourself, you burn yourself out. The more people contribute, the better it is. And I think even when you're in school, you're not taught to seek the help of other people. You write an essay, and if I remember growing up, and it was about, oh, so how did you write this? And if I say, well, I got my mom to help me. Well, you're not supposed to get anyone to help you. You're supposed to know. And as you rightly said, that whole thing around you don't know until you know. And it's about stepping into the unknown. And if you recognize that you're not good at something, then the best thing to do is to reach out to someone else. That's why they've got so many books in the libraries. So you go
Mm.
and seek information, seek resources. Don't just sit there by yourself thinking that you have to know it all. The leader today, the visionary leader today, recognize that it's impossible for him or her to know everything. Tap into your team, find out what's what, become aware of what's happening around you, find out about their food, find out about their culture, find out how they live, and not thinking they're just one way about this is how we do things here. That no longer works.
Absolutely, it doesn't work. And one step further is also the people. I think where I see a lot of people who are entrepreneurs or solopreneurs is that they are trying to do it all, and sometimes they will try to learn, or their small team will try to learn something where they're better off outsourcing it. If you want an excellent, if you want excellence, right? We talked about excellence before in Jamaica, right? I'm bringing back to Jamaica. To achieve excellence, you need to find the best in the field. And to find the best in the field, you have to be ready to invest, right? So if I want somebody who is an extremely creative graphic designer, I can work on Canva, but I'm not going to do it myself because I want someone who's an expert in the field. I would have to invest. Now, the thing is, sometimes when you don't have a lot, investment seems really difficult. It's like a vicious cycle. But you do have to invest at the beginning and then you get it at the end. You know, and for us as in the charities I've worked in, I've always advocated, can we produce an annual report that demonstrates the impact of our work. Now, producing an annual report costs money. When you apply for funding to a funder, you get that money maybe 3-4 months later, sometimes 6 months later. But you have to invest that money at the beginning, the cost of designing it, the cost of writing it, the cost of printing it and publishing it. And then the funder is seeing all your impact in a document. And that influences them to decide whether or not they should fund you. you know so for example, that for me is an investment in myself, because as far as I'm concerned, I've just seen Mirjana's comment about you can always invest in yourself. Thank you, Mirjana, for engaging. We really appreciate your engagement today. So I say it's an investment in me, because if I want to spend that hour to be walking and preparing myself for the Austrian climb, right? How do I free up my time? I've got to invest, pay somebody else to do the job. That's me investing in my own well-being. And I'm sure like other people don't see it this way, but I just thought I'd twist it a little bit and bring it to my way of thinking and looking at things. It is always an investment. You may not see, because you don't see money at the end of it. You don't see it as an investment. You don't see the immediate results. I mean, there is always going to be money at the end. Some of our funding bids at the charity have been like 100,000, more than 400,000. Those are bids that I've written and I've won. And we didn't get those bids because somebody liked us. We got those bids because we're able to deliver. When you're able to deliver, you can then measure, and the metrics, the data says a lot about what you're doing because your service users are saying, like you said, your customer, your client who has had the experience that you have provided that they won't get anywhere else is exactly the kind of thing that goes in the annual report that comes from our service users, which then our funders see and they think, okay, these people can deliver. So yeah, it's I don't know how I ended up going into that rant, but demonstrating and leading from the front, as far as I'm concerned, are the same thing, because you can't lead from the front by just talking. You have to demonstrate through action. And stop calling me action taker, Lorlett. You're just as much an action taker.
Do you know, for me, it's what you're saying really comes down to what we're talking about, is outcomes. It's the
Mm.
outcome. And if you bring it back to food, it's like, who's your audience? I always use food in everything I do to demonstrate. Everything starts off from an idea. So you think about what you're going to cook, then you think about the ingredients, then you think about who's going to eat it, then you look at the presentation in every aspects of it. And so, you get all the components together, and then that is just so amazing. And food for me is the driving force. There's everything is around food. Food is such a social, it brings people together. I remember when I was working in schools with these young men that weren't engaging effectively, I decided to design a breakfast club which enables them to come into schools at 8 o'clock in the morning and just sitting around a table and having a conversation around what school is like for them, what the culture is like for a young person. Just giving the space to actually talk about what's going on for them and having something to eat in the process. That was therapy in itself because it really got them for the very first time to be able to self express and to really share with each other, learn from each other, connect with each other, and recognize the importance of education as well. And so for me, food is everything. I use it in my leadership, I use it in my coaching, in every aspect. And I always say to my clients, if you're going to do an event, you use the process of food, which is who is your audience? How they're going to eat it, how you're going to present it, every aspect, the process of cooking. Monwara, when I think about you in the kitchen and I see the food that you presented on LinkedIn, I keep on saying to you, when are you inviting me around for dinner? You know,
Next time, Lorlett, next time, now that the building works are over, next time.
exactly. And if we look at the differences, like the ingredients that you put in food, they're all different. But when you put them together, make the food taste nice. So it's the same like your team. It's the same like your community. We're all different. You got the onion, you got the scallion, you got the thyme, you have all the different things that you put in there. And when it all comes together, it just tastes amazing. So I always use food in everything I do to explain to someone the differences and how great it is when you all come together.
Fantastic. I love the way you've just described cultural diversity through the cuisine itself, all the differences that go to make a wonderful dish. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. Never really thought of it that way, but it is so true, isn't it? The conflict sometimes, however, I do feel is where we are we sort of distance ourselves from the differences or because of the differences. Um, for example, you have maybe a group of individual and somebody's a vegan and you don't cater for that individual. That's when it becomes difficult. And I remember somebody saying to me, I think it was like a couple of years ago, they said to me, and I know that since then that individual's perspective has changed. They said, well, we can't cater for everybody's needs. Why would we put halal food on the menu if all our users are not Muslim? I said, yeah, well, maybe all your users are not Muslim. However, by not putting something that caters for a certain demographic, like vegan food, for example, or something that's kosher or halal, you're telling them they're not invited.
So you look at it from the perspective of a simple thing, you know, tea and coffee, right? So you'll have tea and coffee and nothing else. Not everybody drink tea and coffee, you know,
Mm, mm,
you know. So you go there and there's no fruit juice. You might get water if you're lucky, but it's tea and coffee, you know. And I think more and more now people are becoming aware. Not everybody drink tea and coffee.
yeah,
So, you know, you have to cater for the people who drink juices or water as well. And that's what I said, you know, you have to understand what does it take to make something excellent and effective as well in that sense. And come right back down to the menu, you know, what do you need to put in the recipe to make these dishes taste nice and look nice and taste nice in the process. So, you know, food for me is such a social thing and it's so powerful because, again, the different ingredients that you put in there to create something phenomenal, if that makes sense.
absolutely makes sense.
It's
And
the
just
creativity, isn't it? It's the creativity, it's the innovation, it's the way of being. And if you're a leader who innovates all the time, then you're always thinking of the complexities around you because you have to innovate and you have to create and you have to recognize that not everybody is the same. And innovation is the way forward because if you're not innovating, you're not creating, then you're not evolving, are you? You're not growing.
absolutely. And that's the point around evolution. And thinking about your audience, our audience, my audience in Bangladesh will be very different to your audience in Jamaica, to our audience in London. You're in London at the most diverse community ever. I always wonder what the audience is before I need to cater. So, like your point around rules of engagement, right? Our rules of engagement have to consider our audience and how to engage them. So, if I'm working in an environment that is extremely multicultural, and my senior leadership team are all white, and yet in all our literature, our website, our publication, we say we welcome people from diverse communities, and maybe say 90% of our service users are diverse communities. What are we doing wrong there? Clearly something's not working.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is not doing your research, not having conversations, because whether we like it or not, that's the reality where this is how we do things here, and change don't come without resistance. Change doesn't come without force. Change doesn't come unless somebody take a stand and said this is not working. And I was saying to you earlier on, it's about looking at what works. Workability is my word. Is it working? And as a leader, your job is to find out, is it working? And we have to have those conversations. What is it like for you? Is it working? How do you
Mm,
feel? Because I think one of the biggest thing is recognizing that you're not included. And I think the worst thing to do is recognizing, oh my goodness, I'm not included in this. And it's a very, very disempowering feeling to recognize that, oh, they didn't think of me. They
mm, mm,
didn't think of me in the process of that. So it's having that awareness about, is it working?
mm, mm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. The awareness as a audience member, the awareness as someone from maybe a particularly diverse community, or like intersectionality, we need to recognize that where we feel disempowered. I also feel the biggest role, which is something that I do in my advocacy of leadership, is those people that are holding some of the most senior roles don't also recognize their own power to make change, because the people at the receiving end don't always they have a power to voice their voice, but they may not be in a position to make change. Whereas you've got people who are sitting on much more powerful positions to make change, and they're completely oblivious. I always say, can you put me in front of the decision makers? Can you put me in front of who are the big bosses of this institution? Because you know, Majana talks about, she says here, but we are more resilient in these situations. Yes, we are resilient, and there is sometimes pushback, but sometimes I found there's a lot of ignorance, not because people don't want to know, but because they're just comfortable and they're used to just being the way they've always been. And innovation hasn't actually knocked on their door yet. So once innovation starts knocking on the door, I think the first step is always realization, and realization happens with the individual. I said this in a meeting yesterday. Once upon a time, I used to spend a lot of energy trying to change others until I realized I can't change others. I can only change me. And then what I do very well as a coach or a mentor is then invite others to go down that similar journey that I've been through, which is think about yourself, become more aware of what you could be doing within your position of responsibility. I remember a work colleague where I was trying to do inclusion and I was asking everyone else's view. I wanted everyone to engage and have an input. And we got to a situation where, it was a split decision, like, okay, so 50-50, right? And she said to me the most obvious thing that I don't even think about because I was too busy doing my work. She said, but Monwara, you're the boss. So you get to decide. And I was like, okay, right. So this is what happens when you get a deadlock, right? What about my own power? What about my own vote? Because I think sometimes leaders like myself, or that sort of perspective or approach, could be very much, oh, you put everyone else on the platform, and, but then you're not focusing on your own growth. And if you're not focusing on your own growth, you're not inspiring others to do so too.
Mm. And yes, that is a good point, because the reality is, leadership is nothing more than influence. And when you get that, you have the power to influence any situation. It's not going to be easy, but, if there is a culture there and you start to put structures in place, and if it's workable and people are recognizing actually it feels better, then the workability comes into it, and then people will start adhering to it because they recognize that it works. But if it's
Mm.
not working, it's out of alignment, there's no shared vision about understanding that. This is why it's good to ask the question, how is it for you? Was it like that inquiry mind around people? Because you don't know until you know. And there's only
Mm.
one way to find out, is to ask the questions, because within those questions, that's where you get the answers. If you don't ask, you're not going to get the right answers, because people will tell you. People always tell you what's going on for
Yes.
them. If you
Yes.
listen, if you really take yourself to listen, and I said this to a client last week. She was giving me a conversation around, oh, she met this new person and she's going into a relationship with this individual. And, he told her at the beginning, I am very much a bad timekeeper. He told her that, and I said, 3 months down the road, why are you upset? He did tell you at the beginning that he's a bad timekeeper. Accept it or leave it.
So, so, so true. They do. People, if you ask, they always, I mean, that's the thing. We started this conversation with you saying something along the lines of we don't know everything and we don't hold all the knowledge. No leader holds all the knowledge. That's why they have great people around them. Um, and for that particular reason, you got to be listening. And we don't, sometimes we listen, but are we really listening?
True.
And I have to say that sometimes I wondered because I find that I'm very quick to maybe after the conversation reflect straight away, and it's like, oh, that's what they said. And I like to write it down because in those conversations or your words are the answers and the solutions. And if you're truly listening to someone and they have suggested what it is that they want or the solution, you would then find a way to make that happen. And I, in my opinion, that's what I do through my leadership, whether I'm chair, secretary, or whatever. If I'm in a position of responsibility, I see my job as listening to everybody, even the ones who don't like to speak. I will find a way so that I hear their opinion too, because it's richer then. It's such a rich way of working when you've got everybody on board and you've heard everybody. You will have an opinion. Sometimes I have an opinion, Lorlett, I'm going to be honest. And like my opinion's gone out of the window after I've heard everyone else.
But it's true. I mean, we listen to everyone else's opinion. And, you know, especially if you're a people pleaser, you
Mm,
spend a lot of time listening to this one wants that and that one wants that, and you make sure they get what they want, and then you literally ignore yourself in that sense. So you're right, you listen to everybody's opinion and you make sure that everyone gets what they want and what they need in that sense. And that's a natural thing if you're a people pleaser. That's for another conversation in terms of who you have to become to give up being a people pleaser in that sense, because it's wanting to please and operate like you don't have an opinion of your own, because
mm-mm,
again, you don't want to upset the status quo in that
mm-mm,
sense,
mm-mm.
you
I
know.
don't agree. I don't agree.
Okay.
First time we don't agree.
Okay.
So I don't actually think it's people pleasing. I think that it's a strength. If somebody actually is has the strength to know that it's important to understand where people are coming from by listening to their opinion. It's not people pleasing because ultimately, if you know your power and you know that you can influence without knowing what the problems, possible problems that you could possibly anticipate, is very hard to make a decision. And sometimes you are going to make the wrong decision. The key is to make a decision and not be indecisive. And that is something that I learned. I loved to listen to everyone's view, but I learned how to progress things fast. And that was by honing into a few priorities, not everything, right? So once you've heard everyone um, and people feel heard, then the key is, and I say this because that's my job. I'm a community builder. That's how I do it. I've been doing it for, I don't know, last 10, 15 years. And this is what I do well. If you have that strength about you, where you take the time because you understand the value of hearing other people's view. Because when you hear other people's view, you also hear the objections, right? Remember, as a leader, you have to navigate your way through resistance. How do you do that if you don't know where the resistance lies?
Okay. So,
I've given too much away today. I've
Monwara,
given
I
too
get
much
it. I
away.
get it. I get it. And you say the key thing, the key word, priority.
Yes, priority. You have
Yes,
to prioritize.
that's it. Because if you don't know what the priorities are, then you have all the answers, you got all the things. but how is that working for you? Have all that
Mm.
information. It's about then looking at how you use it. And it's a strength. Of course, it's a strength to really listen to what people are saying, what people are doing, what they're up to. But if you don't know what the priorities are, and being able to be clear that it's workable for everyone, then what happens is you adhere to everybody else's needs. Come back
Yeah.
down to what I said, and not your own as a leader, So you make sure everyone else is okay. But how do you take care of yourself in that process? That's what I meant.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You mean like the burden, and
How do you
it's,
share it?
yeah, it's the burden. But then the way you share it is, I don't want to give too much away. The way you share it is, you
Don't be
bring us
stingy, Manwara. Don't be
you bring
stingy as a leader.
you bring other people in the know.
Yeah, yeah,
That's how
yeah,
you share it.
yeah.
And you build capacity. And that's another thing I do. And that's my innovative leadership, if you like. The way I try to advocate inclusion is, you have to find ways of building capacity in the sector I work in, the third sector, non-profit, charity sector, whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm.
If you're a person who's running a business, you might have one or two people and you're juggling. There are lots of CEOs of charities where they're doing everything, right? And I'd say the way you build capacity is, you need to bring other people into the fold. Leadership has to be at all levels, not just like the CEO. The CEO has to find ways, and it's not easy and it's not straightforward. The CEO has to find ways that other people are also um, coming onto the leadership arena. And one thing I find that prevents people from doing that is, one, they sometimes compare themselves to somebody who's been doing it for 30 years and they haven't even got started yet, right? Our
Mm,
journeys are very different. The
mm.
other thing is fear. Like, I hear people all the time saying, oh, I don't want to put anything on social media because it's social media is cutthroat, they can cancel you. And we see lots of examples of it on social media at the moment, with certain personalities that have spent years growing their reputation and their brand, and like, they're being cancelled, if you like. So it's a legitimate fear. I mean, for me to be in prominent roles, and I know that I'm also putting myself at risk by doing that. But I feel like, I think of, uh, I don't even know whether I should mention controversy, but I think of the famous MP who has, Diane Abbott. She spent years doing what she's doing. Nobody has a clue the kind of challenges she's had to undergo. And I know it's going to look like I'm advocating, but like, I feel like this is relevant, because this explains why a lot of Black and Asian women may not want to put themselves in the forefront or lead from the front, because they're worried about the judgment, they're worried about the comeback, the repercussions, and then it has a ripple effect on their own mental well-being, but their entire family and their communities. Sorry,
You
that's my rant.
come back down to food, Moran.
I know it's
You
getting serious now.
come back down to food again, right?
You got
So,
me. You got me
uh,
wound up now.
right, so you've got somebody who is brilliant at cooking,
Yeah.
and you're a new wife, and you come in and you think to yourself, "Oh my God, can I really do it like the person who's been doing it for 30 odd years?" And then somebody like Diane Abbott, you and I have no clue what she had to deal with in there. And we can be an outsider looking in and thinking whatever people want to think about it. But I can assure you, kind of been easy for her, especially
Absolutely.
around the rules of engagement, and understand what it takes in order to lead in that kind of institution. I mean, it's a very old institution, and it's changing and evolving, and you go in there with your new ideas around wanting to innovate and create. It can't be easy,
It
especially
can't.
especially as a Black woman.
Yeah, can you imagine though, like, seeing what people have seen in the media, all the negativity, and then if that institution then advertises roles and says, we want Black and Asian or ethnic minority communities to apply for these roles, who's going to want to work in that environment?
But that's where you come into it, Manwara.
What
That's
you
what you're
mean?
there for.
Why?
Represent,
Why?
represent,
Is my skin thicker? Does my
no,
skin look too
listen,
thick?
representation matters. If you don't see people that look like you in position, then you're not going to apply. Somebody would say, well, if Manwara can do it, so can I. So there you go.
Yeah, and that's why I said that right at the beginning. Somebody said something very interesting and said, "I do what I do because it's my business model." And I thought, yeah, they have no idea. My business on this earth is very different to what it might seem like to others. Just like wealth and how you measure wealth, I think some of us spend most of our life wanting to make a difference or impact and see that as a collection of our wealth. Others just see it as, okay, how many is it? Figures, six figures, seven figures. You won't see me on LinkedIn talking about six figures, seven figures, because it's not what it's not what drives me, and it never will be.
Yeah, but you don't have to say it. You don't have to communicate, well, I'm aspiring for a seven figure or eight figure business. You said when I fundraise, I fundraise for 400,000 or 500,000. I mean, it's not rocket science. You put it together, and you're fundraising for your project that you're developing for women in Bangladesh, right? Or Pakistan.
Yeah.
And so the reality of it is, we know that you're a multi-billion pound woman. So there you go. You think big. Why would you be climbing mountains? Sometimes you don't have to communicate it word for word. People pick up on that, and that's your brand. You're a
Hmm.
big thinker, you're an action taker, you're somebody that wants to make a difference. And, if somebody was to ask me, who is Manwara, I would say, for me, she's somebody who wants to make a difference. She's an influencer. She's out there making a difference, whether she know it or not. You're a woman, a trailblazer. That's why we do what we do in the context of what we do. So there you go. Talk about wealth. I talk about seven figures. You don't have to name the numbers, Monwara. We know what you're up to. So there you go.
Is there a way to hide anymore?
No, there's no way to hide. So there you go. And I think come back down to cultural diversity and understanding who you are, what you're up to, the difference you want to make, and even saying a simple thing as hello to somebody. It's that cultural intelligence as well, because for some people, a hello means a lot to them because it's the way they were brought up. And we sometimes in a culture where we don't recognize people, and hello mean that I see you. I can see that you're there. And quite often we so much in our heads because of the culture that we're brought up in that we don't even see people to even say hello to them. And there's a
Mm,
conversation going on with how people are on their phones that we forget nowadays to even say hello to even the people in our own homes, in that sense.
mm. Yeah, yeah. So true. We've got to change that.
Of course, we have to go back to the basics all the time.
Yeah, back to the basics. Okay, we're gonna finish up now, Lola. So, describe a mouth tasting dish that if I were on your retreat, I'd be treated to.
My goodness. There's so many. There's so many. But I always say come back down to Aki.
Cute.
Everything. You have Aki with everything. You have vegetarian Aki. You want everything. You cannot have a dish without Aki. So there you go. When you come to Jamaica, that's what I'm gonna be giving you. What about you?
Aki
What
with saltfish, right?
yes. So what about you? What you up to
Okay.
this week?
I was
This
going
week.
to say something different, but anyway. So what am I up to? I think Rifa, who is sorting out like some bits and pieces with the mountain climb. Um, I'm just going to be I might be posting about the itinerary and what we're doing. So we're going to be climbing two mountains in Austria, and I'll share which parts of Austria and which mountains. Um, and this coming week, I think it's all about tying loose ends for me on some funding bids that I need to submit. And then it's all focused towards, okay, what do I wear to the leadership conference on the 8th of May? I'm really excited. Um, and on the same day, I have something else happening, but I'm not going to say yet.
Oh, that's good. So
Yeah,
what am I going to be working on? I've got
yeah.
some venues that I need to go and visit to give people that experience. So I've got about 3 or 4 different venues to go and visit. So when the people come out in October to the retreat, I've got everything under wraps, organized and everything else. So my plan is I would have the retreat wrapped up by the end of May, and then start to put things into place. So go visiting, have conversation, taste the menus, see what's on there and everything. It's all in the planning, isn't it? Even though
You,
this is gonna be my third one, you can't just take it for granted that it's going to work. You still have to go out there and put the work in. So that's what I'm doing.
yeah, and it's that thing you said earlier about catering for your audience, right? The people that you'll have on the retreat. So when is the retreat? It's in October, right?
October the 25th to the 1st of November.
Oh, wow. It's going to be a very busy time.
Yes, that whole thing again, innovate. Being the leader who innovates and keep on innovating because as you rightly said, nothing happens without change. And it's about that evolving and, trailblazing. This is what we are talking about. How do you trailblaze? How do you make the difference? How do you innovate and how do you create? Because if you're not doing any of that, it's more of the same, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what I love about your retreat, because the people that you take on your retreat, you're taking them on a journey. And that to me is trailblazing. And that journey is like unleashing and helping people to evolve to the next level. That's why you're a trailblazer too.
Thank you. And for me, there's nothing like travel. And
Yeah,
the innovation, innovative thing about the retreat is about combining business and leisure together. And that's very innovative because what some people tend to think, how can you combine business and leisure? But as a leader, these days it's about the culture, it's about understanding, what is it I'm creating. So when I go visiting to any country now, I'm very curious to find out what exactly is happening in that country. So it's not just about, okay, sun, sea, and drink and having a good time. It's also combining the structures. How does that country work? What does it take to work, if that makes sense?
absolutely. Beautiful. A beautiful end to our Saturday live. And thank you to all those who join or watch on replay. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. And famous last words from Lorlett before we say goodbye.
Just like to say thank you for taking the time out to listen to us. And you could be anywhere, but you choose to be with us. So we really appreciate you listening to what we're having to say. Monwara, this is our way of actually giving back. And hopefully somebody listening in the audience can take something away and go and make a difference and influence. So keep on growing, keep on learning, keep on evolving, because that's the only thing ever changes anything. If you're not growing, then you're dead. And we don't believe in that. Okay, goodbye. See you next week.